It was late at night when Stephen arrived in front of the old building that once served as a psychiatric hospital, now abandoned for over 2 decades. A light drizzle fell gently, creating a soft patter on the rotting rooftop. Thunder cracked occasionally, casting flashes of light that revealed the silhouette of the once grand structure. Now nothing more than a haunting memory. Stephen's footsteps echoed on the damp floor as he entered the main corridor. The moss-covered walls reeked with a pungent odor, and the air felt colder than it should have. The few remaining lights flickered slowly, as if struggling to survive amidst the decay. In one corner, he saw a message etched into the wall, its color long faded. "Don't listen to them." Something still lingered inside this building, and Stephen was about to find out what. Stephen sat in the security chair, turning on the old computer still connected to the CCTV system. The screens displayed empty hallways, wrapped in silence. He let out a sigh, trying to ignore the growing unease creeping into his mind. Suddenly, a faint voice came through the walkie-talkie on the desk. At first, it was just static, then it shifted into a whisper barely audible. "Can you see me?" Stephen froze. He was certain no one else was here. His hand trembled slightly as he reached for the walkie-talkie, trying to trace the source of the voice. But the frequency remained silent. On the CCTV screen, the once empty hallway now showed something, a shadow standing motionless in the darkness. With a flashlight in hand, Stephen stepped out into the main corridor. The air grew colder, sending chills down his spine. Each of his footsteps echoed off the narrow walls, casting shifting shadows that seemed to move with him. At the end of the corridor, he saw a faint figure standing still. It didn't move, just stared at him in silence. Stephen's breath caught in his throat as he tried to convince himself it was just his imagination. He aimed his flashlight toward it, but before the beam could touch the figure, it vanished. There was no sign of anyone ever being there. A faint whisper echoed again, this time closer. Stephen turned to his left and noticed a wall that looked different from the others, darker, rougher, and marked by a long crack that seemed newly formed. He ran his hand along the wall, feeling a strange vibration beneath its surface. Suddenly, the whisper turned into a panicked breath. The soft voice echoed through the narrow corridor, as if coming from behind the wall. "I'm trapped. Please." Stephen took a few steps back, his chest rising and falling rapidly. There wasn't supposed to be any hidden rooms inside this building, so who was speaking from within? Stephen returned to the control room, breathing heavily. He sat down and stared at the CCTV screens, hoping to find anything that could explain what had just happened. On the first screen, the hallway appeared empty. No shadows, no figure standing there. He exhaled slowly, trying to calm himself. But when he switched to the second camera, his blood seemed to freeze. There, right in the middle of the hallway that should have been empty, stood a woman with long hair, wearing a white dress that looked soaked and filthy. Her head was slightly tilted and her face was blurred by the camera's distortion. She didn't move, just stood there, staring into the lens. Stephen checked the hallway through the small window in the room. Empty. No one was there. But when he looked back at the CCTV screen, the figure was closer now. He swallowed hard, his lips trembling. The camera flickered slightly, as if the signal was being disrupted. The figure was even closer now, and just as the screen turned to static, a whisper sounded directly behind him. "Can you see me now?" He spun around quickly, flashlight aimed behind him. Nothing. No one was there. He started walking again, footsteps echoed once more. This time quicker. His heart pounded harder. He stood still, holding his breath, then turned around once more. Still nothing. But just as he was about to take another step, the sound came again right behind him. So close, so real, one final step. Stephen held his breath, sensing something standing just behind him. But he didn't dare turn around. With trembling hands, Stephen opened an old archive folder he found on the supervisor's desk. Dust scattered into the air as he flipped through the pages one by one. The names of patients were listed. Most had been transferred or had died. But on the last page, one name stood out: Laras. Status: missing. Beneath it, there was a handwritten note, scrawled in a rushed and frantic manner. The letters slanted wildly, as if written by someone in fear. "Don't look for me." As Stephen read those words, the air shifted. The room grew colder, as if something was slowly approaching. Then, the whisper returned. "You found me!" His heart seemed to stop for a moment. There she was, Laras, standing still, head slightly tilted. Her empty eyes appeared to stare directly at Stephen. He couldn't move. But when he finally blinked, the figure vanished. Only an empty hallway remained. As Stephen searched for answers in the old documents, the lights in the control room suddenly flickered several times before going out completely. The computer screen remained on, casting a dim glow across the room that now felt even smaller. The air shifted colder, heavier. In the silence there was breathing, and it wasn't his own. Whispers began to rise from every direction, growing stronger, more urgent. "I'm not alone." Stephen reached for his flashlight, switching it on quickly. But as the first beam of light cut through the darkness, a shadow darted across the far end of the hallway, gone before it could be identified. Only silence remained, and now Stephen knew he was no longer truly alone. Stephen tried to leave the control room, the door creaking open slowly. He stepped into the hallway, searching for a way out. But as he moved farther, the sound of crying reached his ears, not loud, but unmistakably coming from the far end of the corridor. He stopped. The hallway looked longer than before, as if it were drawing him deeper into the darkness. His steps grew heavier. The air turned colder. The crying shifted into a desperate whisper. "Don't leave me." Stephen stopped in the middle of the corridor, sensing something watching him. He tried to steady his breathing, but the air felt heavier with each passing second. Then from within the darkness, Laras emerged. Her dress was soaked, filthy. Her face pale, with empty eyes that seemed to stare straight into Stephen's soul. Her lips moved slowly, almost soundlessly, speaking words that clenched Stephen's chest with dread. "You're going to stay with me." The camera shook. Stephen's heartbeat thundered in his ears. The figure of Laras stood motionless, unmoving. Then, in an instant, she vanished. But in the hallway mirror to the side, Stephen could see his own reflection, and behind him, Laras' shadow was still there. He spun around quickly. No one. He started to run as the whispers around him grew louder and louder. He didn't notice it. He paused for a moment, staring at something ahead. Suddenly, the screen flickered. Static took over the image. When the footage returned to normal, Stephen was no longer in the hallway. In the middle of the hallway, he found a walkie-talkie still on. He picked it up, trying to catch any lingering sound. Only static. But just before he could switch it off, one last whisper came through. "I'm still here."